Hi, my name is Amy Snow, and I am the new Assistive Technology Instructional Specialist for the Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. This series of videos is going to focus on the Orbit Reader 20, which is a new product from APH that is available on federal quota, and because it's available on federal quota, there are a lot of people that are getting the unit but don't necessarily know the finer points of using it. So this video series is going to focus on how to use the Orbit and to answer any questions that anybody might have about it. So the first thing that we're going to do is an orientation to the unit. So I'm going to turn it around and we're going to start from the bottom. So the first thing you're going to see is the Braille display where the Braille cells will pop up and retract. What's interesting about this display is you will see, if you move your fingers up on the top of the display, there are 4 ticks along the display. These ticks separate each 5 cells. So the first 5 cells and then a tick, and then the next 5 cells and then a tick, and then up until the last 5. That's kind of a nice to have a reference point of where you are. Another nice feature are these panning buttons, one on either side of the display. They pan the display along just like the buttons did on the Refresher Braille 18. And we're going to move up a little bit and to the next 3 buttons. The next 3 buttons are the .7, the spacebar, and the .8. The .7 functions as a backspace key or a go back key if you are not in a file that's editable. The space key, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. It's sometimes used in conjunction with other commands to do a function like space n will create a new file, things like that. But it's not always used for that. .8 is the enter key. It's used to either add a blank line in an editable field or to advance in a menu at times, but mostly you're going to want to use that in an edit field. Moving up again, I like to call this the navigation cross. It's actually pretty simple. The middle key is the select key. The select key, just so you know, is used in conjunction with a lot of commands. So a lot of times when in the instruction manual you see things like do a select and M, it means do a select key followed by the letter M, not like in the old way when you used to do like the old chording method, for those of you who are old enough to remember some of those older Braille note takers. A lot of times if it's a menu function, you're going to use the select key and then pause a second and then press the key that it tells you to continue with to do the command that you want. And that will make a lot more sense further on in this series. So in the menus, the up and down arrows are used to navigate each item in a menu, and the left and right arrows are used to select an option of that item. So I'm going to use the cursor blink rate as an example. If you notice that you don't want your cursor to blink every second, you can enter the menus and find the cursor blink rate setting using your up and down navigation keys, and to set it among the options that it gives you the option of 1, so it blinks every 1 second, 5, 15, 30, 60, or 0, which means it's stationary. So it cycles around. There's no it doesn't get to the end of the menu and you have to go backwards. It cycles around, which is kind of nice. Going up a little more are our Braille keys. Sometimes they're used. They're your standard keys, dots 1 through 6 in the standard positions. They have a nice little edge to them, and they're a little bit sort of angled to kind of help with the ergonomics. They are in a straight line rather than in an ergonomic pattern, and I'm not really sure why that is, but that's okay. These keys are typically used mostly for entry, but they're also used in some of our more common commands, like we talked about with the space and dot space and N to create a new file, or a space 1, 2, 3 to go to the top of a file, or space 4, 5, 6 to go to the bottom. So those are used in a variety of ways. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this around so you can see the back of the unit. And on the back of the unit, I'm going to give them to you from my left, your right. This is the power button. The neat thing about the power button is you have to hold it in for like 2 to 3 seconds, and the unit will make a sound, and the Braille display will activate when it's turned on. It'll also activate when it's turned off. All the cells will pop up and go down, so that you're sure that the button took effect. If you just tap it, it puts the machine into a sleep mode, so that it'll conserve your battery. One other thing to note that's kind of interesting is if your display is in standalone mode, and we'll talk about that later, it will automatically go into sleep after about an hour, but it will shut itself off after about 5 hours. So that's nice. So your student, if they put it in your backpack and forget to turn it off, it will turn itself off overnight. It won't be on all night. It will significantly drain the battery, but it won't completely and totally die, probably. The next function is the SD card. As you can see, it protrudes a little bit. So we're going to just push it in. It's got a spring action, so you can pull it right out. They're interchangeable. When you put it back into the unit, the teeth that you feel on the bottom, they need to be facing down and towards the unit. So if you reinsert it, that's how they need to go back in. So, and then you just push it in slightly. You'll hear it click or feel it click, and then it will stay. Just so you know, you cannot use an SD card that's any smaller than a 4 gig, and it takes up to, I believe it's a 32 gig. So yeah, 64 gigs are nice, but remember, these are just text files, so not going to take up a whole lot of room. So probably a smaller SD card is better, just because it'll take the unit less time to read it. The last thing on the back side is the charging port. It takes a standard USB type microcharger, like I call them like the standard Android chargers. They just take a standard Android charger. The last part of the unit obviously is the bottom. And there really isn't a whole lot to show here. Don't worry about this is just for the state tracking. There is here's the door, the battery door that you can open. Now you might notice there are some screws here to keep it in place, and that's, to keep your student from fiddling with it. Inside of the battery door are interchangeable rechargeable batteries. So if you find that your batteries are not charging right, or they're not keeping a charge, you can change them out. So that's kind of a nice feature that this unit has. So that's pretty much it for the orientation to the unit. I hope that this has been helpful, and we will in the next series, or in the next video in the series, we will progress into talking about the menus.